Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Health in Islam. I'm your host, Ismail Chartier. Today our topic is going to be anger management. And we'd like to welcome back one of our favorite guests and friend, Dr. Yasser. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Yasser. In broad terms, what is anger?
It's interesting. Anger is basically a feeling. It's an internal feeling. God has given it to us just like any other feeling. And it's not only a feeling, but it could be translated into an action too, because we act most of the time according to our feelings. So that's what anger is.
Now, why do we need to manage it?
Well, we need to manage it for several reasons. First of all, I need to talk about also where does it come from, the anger. The anger comes from basically something that's very simple. If I want something and I don't get it, I get angry. Or if I don't want something to happen and it happens anyway, I get angry.
Like locking yourself out of your house.
That happens a lot.
And you get angry.
Yeah, so I could get angry at other people or I could get angry at myself. These are the reasons for anger, basically. It's the expectations of oneself and the expectations of other people.
So when your expectations aren't met by you or by others,
we get upset, and we get angry. Okay. We need to manage our anger to be able to deal with people effectively, to be able to have relationships with colleagues, with friends, with family in a way that is acceptable. That's why we need to manage our anger. There are a lot of people that I see that come for treatment and they want to deal with anger. They actually don't want to deal with it. They want to get rid of it. And it's impossible to get rid of anger because it's a feeling, and the meaning of getting rid of it is that it will never happen again, and you can't do that.
We all know that everyone becomes angry. What is the difference between a normal anger response and one that is defective?
First, let me talk about defective anger response. This is when somebody feels angry and they act on it in an unacceptable way by the society that they live in.
Like punching somebody in the head
or punching a hole in the wall, or calling names, or, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things that you can do that is not acceptable by the society. That's the face of anger that you don't want to see. However, which is the action? The feeling of anger, that's acceptable, because no matter how you deal with anger, he's still going to get angry again, because it's a God-given feeling to you. So you have to recognize your anger, you have to accept your anger, and another thing that we have to do is we have to recognize what's the feelings beneath the anger, because anger is 9 times out of 10 a secondary feeling. I don't want to say 100%.
Your feelings get hurt, you're upset, you're sad, so this causes you to become angry.
That's correct.
This is the secondary response is anger. The first response is somebody has offended you or something like this.
The first response at the bottom. The main feeling is the sadness or the humiliation or somebody put you down or anything like that.
Things like this.
This is at the bottom. The surface is the anger. So whenever you get angry, you need to take a few minutes and think, what made you get angry?
Find the root of the anger.
Is the actual feeling that you need to deal with, that you need to manage.
Anger is the response.
Anger,
in a way,
it's the feeling that you act upon. Because a lot of people would say, well, to themselves, unconsciously, it's a lot easier to deal with anger than it is to deal with humiliation, for instance. It's a lot easier to look at anger than it is to look at humiliation.
Oh, that makes sense.
So they run away from humiliation by getting angry at other people.
Why does one individual have an explosive temper and one can remain completely calm in a similar circumstance? Say my car breaks down and I'm smashing it on the side of the road with a tire iron, and your car breaks down and you're completely calm about that. What is the difference there?
In my opinion, I'm going to talk about this from a spiritual point of view. In my opinion, somebody who believes in fate, their anger is going to be much less than somebody who doesn't. Somebody who believes that there is God and there is a higher power that's in control of everything is going to have a lot less anger than somebody who is in control of everything, thinks that they are in control of everything. Because that's what causes anger. When I am in control of something and it doesn't happen, that's when I get angry. But when I think that God is in control of things and I believe in fate, my anger, I can get upset, yes, but my anger is going to be
much less.
to a much lesser extent.
So belief in predestination, in qadr in Arabic, in predestination of things, good and bad,
That
relieves your anger.
reduces the anger.
That's I've never heard anybody explain that that's why one person is this way and that's why one person is that way. But it's the best explanation I've ever heard.
That has a lot to do with it. Because a lot of people are actually, they love to be in control. They like to control everything. It's a human nature. Since the creation, we like to control everything or think that we are in control of everything.
Want to be in charge. When is anger unjustified? Or is it always unjustified? Is it never unjustified? Is there a time when, anger just shouldn't be?
Well, again, anger, I think it is unjustified when you act in an appropriate way to a minute event. Something small would happen and you rage and rave about it, and it's just unacceptable. That's unjustified anger. And that depends a lot on the way you perceive things, the way your perception of the world and your perception of everything external towards you. That will affect your degree of anger.
Do you know any Islamic concepts that help deal with anger? Like making wudu or anything like this that would help deal with anger?
Yes. Actually, water. And we always recommend that in behavior modification, cognitive behavior modification as well. We always recommend that when you get angry, we always say, well, count to 10 backwards. Counting to 10 backwards meaning that you have to reflect upon your own feelings inside, reflect on yourself and see what's going on and what you're doing. Go and wash your face with cold water. Cold water is to reduce your anger, and that actually has a medical connotation to it too. It's just like when somebody gets overly hot, you put water on them or
wet rag
or something.
I know, like when my kids are throwing temper tantrums, which is a form of anger, my wife will put water on their face and on their heads, and they stop instantly throwing the temper tantrum. Just, it's not like throw a pail of water in their face, but, rub water on their head and on their face, and it stops the temper tantrum. They calm down. They return to their normal selves.
That's true. That's true, because a hot temper is basically, we even call it hot temper, because since we call it hot temper, there is a correlation between that and fire, and you put out fire with water. There are other teachings. The Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we were always taught that if you're angry and you're standing up, sit down. If you're sitting down, you want actually, Father, to lay on the floor, on the ground, and then your anger goes down.
It keeps you from reacting to this anger too if you follow this hadith, this tradition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because if you're standing, you sit down, and now you're removed from it one step, so you can't act violently from this anger. And if you still, have the urge to get up and fight, to do something violent, then you lay down.
Yes, and if you take a look at it, anybody who's in a position of authority, it's easier for them to get angry. So if you are standing up and looking at somebody sitting down, you are in a position of authority at him. So if you sit down, you're on the same level, and if you sit down even lower, you're at the lower level, which it has something to do with reducing the anger.
It has a lot to. What are some exercises or some teachings that you know that we can incorporate into our lives to help us reduce our anger and to help us to manage it when it comes, so we don't have a negative response to our anger? So if I get mad at somebody, I don't, start screaming and yelling, or if somebody at home does the same.
there is what we call channeling, because anger is energy. It's a feeling and it's energy at the same time. We call it rechanneling. So you can rechannel your anger into painting. I used to tell patients, well, can you paint your anger to me? And they paint red or black or whatever, and they paint their anger. So it comes out in painting. It could be in sports. It could be in a lot of things. So instead of getting angry, you can get involved with a lot of other
positive
activity.
In broad terms, what is anger?
It's interesting. Anger is basically a feeling. It's an internal feeling. God has given it to us just like any other feeling. And it's not only a feeling, but it could be translated into an action too, because we act most of the time according to our feelings. So that's what anger is.
We're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to Health in Islam. We're here with Dr. Yasser still. Nothing's changed since we came back, since we went to the break, and we're still discussing anger management. We're going to hop right back in because we were discussing how to deal with it, what exercises we needed to do. You were going to discuss what we need to do internally.
Yeah, we already talked about rechanneling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, internally, we have to deal, in therapy, we have to deal with the internal representation of oneself and of the world. Because internal representation is basically, it works like filters.
So what it basically is, let me see if I understand, is if I think the world hates me, I'm going to reflect this to people, and then I'm going to grow more angry in this. The way I see the world is the way that the world sees me, kind of thing. Is this kind of like this?
It's similar to that, yeah, very much. Because there is a map, and this map is written a long time ago between the age of 0 to 7. And what happens is that if this map is written incorrectly or drawn incorrectly, then we're going to see everything in that incorrect map. And that increases the anger. For instance, to give you an example, I could look at somebody and they think that I mean to put them down just by the way I look at them. And the same look, I could look at somebody else. They think that I'm saying hi or how are you or,
I want to be your friend or something like that.
Yes, and that's the internal representation, the filters that they have inside. And the filters actually act to delete, distort the information that we take. And that's the deletion and the distortion of the information. So we need to rewrite this map. In order for you to do this, you have to go to therapy. Psychotherapy.
Intense therapy, or once a week for an hour?
It depends on the person. It depends on the situation, and it depends on the person himself that wants to go to therapy, or they really want to do it fast or slow, or how hard they're working in the therapy. So that's what goes on. The other thing that we need to do is communication stuff. Communication has a lot to do with provoking anger, because of the tone of voice, first of all. It can provoke anger in somebody or not. The choice of words, it can also provoke anger or not. And talking about your own inner feelings. When we're talking about these filters inside this segment we're just talking about, you have feeling like anger. If you hold on to it and you don't talk about it to somebody and you don't communicate your feeling to somebody, anger actually changes into hatred. And there is a big jump between anger and hatred, because anger, it could be positive or negative, but it's a healthy feeling. However, hatred, on the other hand,
is always negative.
It's negative because it is not a healthy feeling. I could just tell you I hate somebody. That's totally different than I'm angry at such and such or so and so, or at this situation or that situation. And that's what we have to deal with, our feeling. We need to recognize our feeling, label it, affirm it, and then communicate it.
So like the people who just hate for no reason, let's say a racist, is this kind of hate, is it born from this internal mapping that you're talking about, this map from first 7 years?
Yes.
This hate is brought up from that map, and it starts as anger, and then it becomes hate?
It's actually, Well, just take a minute and talk about this. From the age 0 to 7, or from the time of birth until the age of 7, we call it the imprint stage, meaning that everything that's being done or said in front of the baby at that age, they're like a sponge. They just suck it in, all of it. So that's why we call it the imprint stage. And the map is written
in that stage.
And then after the age of 7, and you moving on, there are a lot of stages, but you have what we call running synapses modulation. And that's where all the external issues would go through your brain and then through your internal filters.
You digest all that in.
And then I behave accordingly.
Oh.
So if I was raised by parents that are prejudiced, I'm going to be prejudiced unless if I stop and take a look at it and stop. If I don't do that, I will end up being prejudiced. The imprint stage is 0 to 7. The modeling stage, which is the teaching, is 7 to 14. And then the socialization stage is 14 to 21. And this is the stages, if we're going to take a look psychologically at it. All I have to do is just give love and affection and play with my children the first 7 years, because their brain is not developed enough to be able to be taught anything. At the age of 7, then the brain is developed enough to be able to receive information, to be able to process information and follow directions. So from 7 to 14, I do all the teaching.
There goes another, teach them to pray when they're 7. Another hadith of Muhammad, teach them to pray when they're 7.
And we didn't know that a long time ago. I mean, we knew that recently, a few years ago in the psychology field. And then the socialization is 14 to 21, which is actually when they become a teenager and then they go out. And instead of pushing them away,
you pull them in.
I pull them in by being their friend. So this is another thing about child rearing and family therapy and stuff we do.
And also with anger management, because of the imprinting at that time, that 0 to 7.
That's what we do.
That's incredible. So you could just, extreme psychotherapy is the only way, not extreme, I shouldn't say that, just psychotherapy is the only way to really remap that internal map that they're given at that imprint stage.
This is one piece. The other piece is behavioral modification, because you can work with it from two ends. The one end is you do modification to behavior at this particular time, and the other piece of it is that you go back and you do the psychotherapy to find out what happened at the first 7 years, or at the imprint stage, or all of this
caused them to have this
childhood
effect,
experience,
extreme anger.
Yeah.
What do you recommend for a person who wants to change their behavior? They want to become just less angry. They're not angry all the time, but they have like bouts of anger. What would you recommend for this person to do? Is there, I mean, there's obviously a breathing technique that you can do, but is there anything else that you can say to help you become less angry, or think that you can be, go to, I hear people say, go to your happy place, go to your happy place.
Well,
is there anything like this? Or is this
well, go to your happy place, it could work, but it doesn't usually work all the time. So what I would recommend is that they do what I call affective management or feelings management, is that they have to recognize what's underneath the anger, because anger is a secondary feeling. Once they recognize what's underneath the anger, they have to talk about it or process the anger with somebody, because they will never be able to get rid of the anger. However, they can resolve the situation that made them feel angry. So communication is a huge part.
Just learning how to talk about your feelings.
In an acceptable way, because I could talk to somebody in a way that makes them want
to swear and cuss.
Yeah. So that's anger in itself coming out. So this is what I would recommend. Being assertive about it. Not being passive, not being aggressive or passive-aggressive. You need to be assertive about your own feelings.
Own them, kind of. You say, this is what I feel right now, or...
Talk about yourself. That's part of the assertion. Like I could come and talk to you, and I say, well, I really feel upset about what happened today. So I'm not pretty much talking about the situation, but I'm talking about my feeling. I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about my feelings.
You say something like, I became upset when you did. It was just a healthy way?
That's a healthy way to deal with it.
Because it opens dialogue between you and another person.
Yes.
The object of your anger at that point.
Yeah, that's one piece. And the other piece is the rechanneling the anger into positive activities. The third step is that you need to do exercising.
Not just any physical cardiovascular kind of exercise will help.
Even if it's just walking half an hour a day, it helps in reducing the anger. Because anger has a lot to do with the energy that's in the body. So once you're doing any kind of exercise or anything, that would help a lot in reducing the amount of anger that could come out.
The question I really want to ask you is what kind of exercise and how much exercise would you need to do on a daily basis to help control your anger? Something like running and jogging, walking.
Running and jogging is actually what we recommend, cardiovascular exercises. And this is to move the energy in your body. When we say exercising, you could do it early in the morning or you could do it after you come back from work. I would recommend that you do it early in the morning, but that depends on the person. If you do it early in the morning, it will give you a positive outlook in the day, and you go there with a healthy outlook. You could do walking, because a lot of times jogging is not good for your knees and stuff like that. Yeah. So you can do walking, but when you walk kind of fast. You don't just walk. Yeah, you kind of, you walk fast, walk. So you
what
do
about
that
punching a heavy bag? Is this excessive violent, or is this a good way to relieve your anger?
No, it's actually good. If you're able to get a punching bag and put it in the basement or something, that would be something good to do. But if you're not able to do that, so what other options do you have? You can just go out jogging, and that's what we would recommend for at least 15 minutes, and you can increase that time by
so
checking
you're also
your
getting
pulse.
Cardiovascular exercise, and it's relieving your anger. What about screaming?
Screaming is good. A lot of times we do this in therapy as well, and screaming actually has been proven that it moves the energy in your body. And you find a lot in a lot of societies that when they are pushing something heavy, they scream while they're pushing it because it helps them to move the energy in the body. So screaming is very good because the whole idea is to release this energy that's kept inside your body.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Health in Islam, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Yasser, for coming.
Thank you.
And we'll see you, inshallah, have you on another show. Assalamu alaikum.